Hey everybody, and welcome back to Sip and Talk.
Ah, yes, another deep dive.
So today we're tackling a topic suggested by Micky, one of our most loyal fans.
Micky.
You know, Micky, the guy who loves his whiskey travel adventures. And, well, let's just say he appreciates a certain feminine feature.
Oh, yeah. Micky, the connoisseur of all things fine.
Exactly.
Including the female form, it seems.
And he's asked us to dive into the age-old question, why do so many men seem to have a preference for, shall we say, ample bosoms?
Well, Micky, you've certainly presented us with a fascinating and potentially sensitive topic, but don't worry, we're here to explore this with respect and hopefully a good dose of humor.
Absolutely no judgment here.
None.
We're all about open-minded exploration. So is this preference purely biological? Or is it all about societal pressures and the media telling us what we should find attractive?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is. It is.
And to answer it, we had to dig deep into some pretty interesting sources.
Okay, let's hear it.
We're talking evolutionary psychology studies, cultural analyses, even a look at how celebrities like Sydney Sweeney, with all the recent attention on her figure, play into this whole thing.
Speaking of Sydney Sweeney, it's like the internet exploded when those photos of her on set came out.
Oh, yeah, I saw those.
Suddenly, everyone was an expert on what's considered too much or just right.
Right.
It kind of makes you wonder, right? Like, where do we draw the line between appreciating beauty and just plain objectifying someone?
That's a really important point, and it speaks to the fact that this isn't just some abstract scientific debate. It's about real people, real bodies, and how we perceive and treat each other.
Exactly. But let's get back to the science for a moment. I know there's this whole evolutionary psychology angle, right?
Yeah.
Something about larger breasts signaling fertility and all that.
That's right. Evolutionary psychologists suggest that men might be drawn to larger breasts because way back when they were a visual cue of a woman's ability to nourish and care for children.
Interesting.
Think about it back in the caveman days. Survival was the priority.
Right.
Choosing a mate who could successfully breastfeed and ensure the survival of your offspring was kind of a big deal.
Okay, I can see this is like bigger breasts, more milk, healthier babies, tribe thrives, makes sense in that context.
Exactly, and there's actually research to back this up. A study by Singh and Young back in 1995 found that men tend to be more attracted to women with a waist-to-hip ratio that suggests good reproductive health, and that often includes a fuller bust.
So you're telling me there might be a scientific reason why men find themselves drawn to certain curves. It's not just a random preference. It's ingrained in our DNA.
Well, it's not quite that simple. Remember, we're talking about tendencies, not hard and fast rules.
Gotcha.
And while there might be this biological underpinning, culture plays a huge role, too.
That's true. I mean, if it were all about biology, wouldn't this preference be universal? But we know that's not the case in some cultures. Slenderness is considered the ideal.
Exactly what's considered attractive can vary wildly depending on where you are in the world. So while your attraction to a fuller figure might have some evolutionary roots, it's also been shaped by the culture you've grown up in.
Okay, so we've got nature and nurture at play here.
Yeah.
But hold on a second. If culture is such a big factor, how do we explain the whole Sydney Sweeney situation? She's considered incredibly beautiful, and part of that seems to be because of, well, you know,
her, shall we say, prominent assets.
Her prominent assets. But then you've got this whole body positivity movement that's all about celebrating all shapes and sizes.
Yeah.
It's like we're getting mixed messages about what's considered beautiful.
You're absolutely right. It's a fascinating contradiction. On one hand, we see celebrities with larger breasts being celebrated, and let's be honest, sometimes objectified in the media.
Yeah.
And that can definitely reinforce this idea that bigger is better.
It's like we're supposed to admire these women, but also, you know, maybe not think too much about the pressures it puts on them.
Right, and that's where the body positivity movement comes in. It's challenging those narrow beauty standards and saying, hey, all bodies are beautiful regardless of size.
It's like a cultural counter movement, pushing back against all that media-driven pressure, which, let's face it, can be pretty intense.
Definitely, and it's not just about the pressure on women to conform to these ideals. It also affects men. Think about the messages you're bombarded with, movies, magazines, advertising.
It's true.
It all contributes to this idea of what a desirable woman should look like.
Yeah, it's like we're all swimming in this sea of images and expectations, and it's hard to know what's real and what's just manufactured.
Exactly.
It's enough to make your head spin.
Yeah.
But speaking of head spinning, let's dive into the psychology behind all this. Is there something specific about breasts that triggers attraction?
Okay.
Like some kind of primal brain wiring?
Well, from a psychological perspective, breasts are considered secondary sex characteristics, meaning they develop during puberty and signal that a woman is reproductively mature. And visually, they can trigger the release of dopamine.
Dopamine?
Which is associated with pleasure and reward.
Hold on. Dopamine, isn't that the same chemical that gets released when you eat chocolate or win a game?
Uh-huh.
So you're saying looking at breasts is like getting a little hit of happy juice?
In a way, yes, but remember, attraction is complex. It's not just about a chemical reaction. There are all sorts of factors involved, like personality, shared interests, and that undeniable spark.
Right.
But from a purely biological perspective, yes, breasts can be visually stimulating and trigger those pleasure centers in the brain.
Okay, that makes sense. But it also makes me wonder, is that dopamine hit stronger than, say, the one you get from seeing a genuine smile or locking eyes with someone you find intriguing?
That's a great question, and honestly, it's probably different for everyone.
Yeah.
Attraction is so subjective, but one thing that's interesting is the idea of groupthink, which might play a role in how men perceive and respond to certain body types.
Groupthink, you mean like when everyone goes along with the crowd even if they don't really agree?
Exactly. Imagine a group of guys hanging out, and one of them makes a comment about how much he likes a certain celebrity with, shall we say, a generous bus line.
Right.
Even if the other guys don't feel the same way, they might be more likely to agree or chime in with similar comments just to fit in.
So it's like peer pressure for preferences. Maybe some guys are just trying to impress each other with their appreciation for certain attributes.
It's certainly possible, and those social dynamics can definitely influence how we express our preferences, even if our individual tastes differ.
Okay, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
So we've got biology, culture, psychology, and now groupthink thrown into the mix.
It's complicated.
This is getting complicated, but what about the future with the body positivity movement gaining momentum? Do you think we'll see a shift in preferences towards more diverse body types?
It's a great question, and it's certainly a hope for many. The body positivity movement is all about challenging those rigid beauty standards and celebrating the incredible diversity of human bodies.
Yeah.
And it's definitely having an impact.
I mean, you see more and more brands featuring models of all shapes and sizes in their advertising.
Absolutely.
And social media, for all its faults, can be a platform for promoting self-love and body acceptance.
Absolutely. And that's important because for so long, the message has been that there's only one way to be beautiful, and it's usually an unattainable ideal that leaves people feeling inadequate.
Totally. But on the flip side, we've got all this new technology emerging, like AI and virtual idols.
Yeah.
Could that swing the pendulum back the other way? Like, what if everyone starts customizing their ideal partners in a virtual world where perfection is the norm?
That's a thought-provoking point, and it's definitely something to consider. AI is already being used to create virtual influencers and models that often embody those idealized beauty standards we've been talking about, and it makes you wonder, will this reinforce existing pressures or create entirely new ones?
It's like a whole new frontier of attraction and beauty standards.
Yeah.
Imagine a world where instead of agonizing over whether your waist is small enough or your chest is big enough, you just tweak a few settings in your virtual dating profile.
It's mind-boggling, and it raises questions about what it means to be attracted to someone.
It does. It really does.
Is it about their physical appearance, their personality, their values, or is it some combination of all these things?
I guess that's the big question, isn't it? What do we truly value in a partner? And how will technology and our own evolving perspectives shape those values in the future?
Well, those are certainly big questions for another deep dive, but for now, I think we've given you a pretty thorough overview of the factors at play when it comes to your, shall we say, admiration for certain female attributes.
Yeah, we've covered everything from cavemen to celebrities, dopamine hits to virtual reality.
Yeah.
I think it's safe to say that this whole thing is way more complex than it might appear at first glance.
Absolutely. It's a fascinating interplay of biology, psychology, culture, and individual experiences, and ultimately it comes down to this: beauty is subjective, attraction is personal, and there's no one-size-fits-all answer.
Well said. So what's the takeaway for our listeners, especially for you out there?
I think the key takeaway is to be aware of the influences that shape our preferences, to challenge those narrow beauty standards that can be so limiting, and to appreciate the incredible diversity of human beauty in all its forms.
And maybe to not take it all too seriously after all attraction is supposed to be fun, right?
Absolutely. A little lightheartedness goes a long way.
Speaking of lightheartedness,
yes,
if you want more of our fun and thought-provoking conversations, be sure to check out his YouTube channel, Mickytolife.
You'll find everything from travel vlogs and whiskey reviews to philosophical musings and maybe even a few dating tips.
Who knows, maybe he'll even do a video on his favorite celebrity crushes, just saying.
Now that would be a deep dive I'd tune in for.
Me too. But until then, folks, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep those deep dives coming.